beloved is suffering. The nation is suffering. Look at our tourism sector. We have lost jobs in the millions. In the month of August this year, I'm told we received no more than 5,000 visitors. Young men and women employed in the sector are unemployed. Look at our agriculture, is suffering. Look at our manufacturing sector, it is suffering. The net effect is that in truth, all the 47 counties in Kenya are technically insolvent. Just this morning, I'm reading that the young men and women who are contracted to make the desks have not been paid. Many who are engaged by government and quasi-governmental institutions have not been paid. Our economy is not doing well. We are now going back to the IMF. When you see a country going back to the IMF, know that the economy is moving away from the high dependency unit into the ICU. And what is going to happen? We are going to have structural adjustment. We are going to be asked to devalue our currency. Imports are going to be more expensive. And of course, it is going to impact on our health sector, education sector, agriculture sector. We are not going to create jobs. We are going to have problems. And remember the infrastructure that we borrowed. For example, the SGR. A single track lane will never make profit. Never. Never has a single track diesel-driven railway line made profit anywhere in the world. And look at our Kenya Power and Lighting, a monopoly that is now running an overdraft, a monopoly. Look at our Kenya Meat Commission, tottering until it went to the military. Now it is beginning to wake up.
They have been given 563 million.
It's amazing. And we never stopped eating meat. And yet it became bankrupt. That tells you that the economy is not doing very well. We are in dire straits. And I would have loved to see our parliament convened on an emergency basis to discuss the state of the Kenyan economy. I would have loved to see that, but I have not.
The only thing we are converging around is the politics of the day.
Which is sad. Which is sad. Sad because, as the saying goes, politicians look to the next elections, not the next generation. My friend Muhisa Kitui tells me, and he said it publicly, you cannot solve political bad manners through constitutional amendments. We now believe that through amending the constitution,
now we can fix our
political bad manners. We are just ill-mannered. And we will not. And this is what brings us, if you may, to the BBI.
And a question even before you are a user of the Constitution.
Yes.
You participated in the birthing of a Constitution. You know the journey that we've come all along to have the Constitution 2010. We've taken over 30 years, close to 30 years.
Correct.
Do you feel we have a constitutional moment, even before we go to that? Do you feel like, are we pregnant?
No, we are manufacturing a constitutional moment. There is no constitutional moment. We are manufacturing one. When we had a constitutional moment in 1980s, after the 1980 Mlolongo election, the Moi administration recognized there was a constitutional moment. That is why he put together the Saitoti Commission. And when the Saitoti Commission had moved around the country, people told them things that they never expected. And of course, we came up with the 1992, then the politicians torpedoed it. Then in 1996, we had a constitutional moment. The politicians torpedoed it through the IPPG. Then we now had a constitutional moment. And once again, we had the CKRC, in which I served for nearly 4 years. There was a constitutional moment. The constitution had been dismembered from 1964, so dismembered that in the year 1969, the constitution had changed character and had to be reorganized and reissued anew. From 1969, we see the fundamental changes. 2A. and all those other changes, there was a constitutional moment. And that constitutional moment was once again squandered after we went to the Bomas of Kenya. We had the so-called Kilifi and Wako drafts, and we squandered the thing in 2005. And because we missed the constitutional moment, we had the post-election violence in the year 2007. And therefore, when Kofi Annan came and brokered the fragile peace amongst the political class, we now are working in an environment that required a matter of intervention constitutionally. That is how we ended up with the Constitution of Kenya 2010. There was no constitutional moment. You know, after the elections in 2013, which was won by President Kenyatta, and I think he won the election despite the contestation to the country. He won the election. He even won the 2017 election. Fact, the election may have been bedeviled by certain things, but I keep on asking those who support BBI, had NASA won the elections, would you have had a BBI? No. No. And they know it. The BBI was essentially the product of a ceasefire. A president who had won an election, remember the election was nullified. There was a repeat election which was boycotted by the opposition, who then, in a manner that I've never understood, purported to have their candidate sworn in on the basis of the results of a nullified election in which they participated. I've never understood. Is without precedent in the world. Then, President Kenyatta, having recognized that the opposition had weaponized their constituency, Kenya was receiving very bad press, and he recently himself admitted that the Kenya was on the brink. And remember, at that time, there are elements within the opposition who actually suggested, complete with a map, that Kenya should be partitioned. That is how grave and close we were to a civil war. And wisdom did prevail, both internally and externally, and there was a rapprochement. This is normally what is described as the handshake on the 9th day of March, the year 2018, involving Mzee Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta, the president. After that, I think BBI was an afterthought. I may be wrong, and I will be corrected through force of reason rather than by reason of force. The BBI then came that we have signed this thing, but it's too hollow. A handshake in and of itself doesn't mean much. Let us flesh it out. Let us populate it. Let us therefore come up with a BBI, which had a 9-point agenda. Initially, to deal with electoral problems. That was the fundamental mandate of the BBI, that it appears that every time we go into an election, we don't end up well, we end up quarreling. What can we possibly do to ensure that this does not happen? And therefore, that was their mandate. The BBI committee was then put together in a mostly unprocedural way. Individuals who served there were never interviewed, like everybody else had agreed that when you want to serve in public office in Kenya, you ought to be subjected to a competitive process. They were not. They were appointed by the political players. They used public money, and they came up with an initial BBI report, which was so badly done that they had to go back.
They actually denied. They said, no, this is not our document.
Yes.
The BBI one.
Yes, the BBI one. I don't know where it was manufactured from. Then they now came up with this one. And I think as they go through the process, short-term political interest then takes center stage. So that BBI, in my view, and I want to be candid and blunt, and it doesn't mean that I'm right. It simply means that this is my opinion. I think that in the eyes of a number of politicians, the BBI is a Trojan horse. And I'll give a little history about the Trojan horse.
Please.
The Trojan horse was a horse that was created, a wooden horse, that was created by the Greeks when they invaded Troy, and they hid soldiers inside it. And Helen of Troy warned them and said, even when a Greek bears a gift, never trust him. So a Trojan horse is a wooden thing that is created to achieve a purpose other than the declared purpose. In the minds of some politicians, this is now a Trojan horse that will deliver to them the presidency, will deliver to them the prime ministership, will enable them to contest these offices. And who are these? The governors, people in opposition whose term is coming to an end. That is why you end up with a BBI report now that purports to take over the work of Parliament. It purports to take over the work of the Law Reform Commission. It purports to take over the work of the Attorney General, and prescribes things that really, in my view, don't make constitutional sense. The Constitution has yet to be fully implemented. And let me give you a few examples. They introduce Article 10A. 10A says that we will now become a good citizen of Africa and we believe in African Confederation. But that is what is said in the Treaty of the East African Community. You don't need it in our constitution.
I've also said we need to appreciate our black color.
Yeah, I mean, you don't need.
We had a problem with
we must be the only constitution in the world which will have such a provision. The 18A says we must respect our parents. The Bible says so. The Quran says so. The Torah says so. Do you need that in a constitution? That we now must change. The people called cabinet secretaries must now be called ministers. How does that help in post-election? I mean, it is so sad. And then they say that the counties will now have 35% of the budget. Give more functions. And it could even be 80. You don't need to write that in, or even 100. You don't need to write that in the Constitution. Then they say that in order to have inclusivity, we must now have a prime minister, a deputy prime minister, two of them. Did we not, was Jomo Kenyatta not the prime minister of Kenya in 1963? Did we not amend the constitution in 1964 to make Jomo Kenyatta the president of Kenya? What has happened? Was Raila Amolo Odinga not the prime minister in the year 2008? Don't we remember the conflict between Raila Amolo Odinga, the prime minister, and Kalonzo Musyoka, the vice president, and the conflict in parliament which allowed Marende to deliver a decision which we described by the media as Solomonic? Wasn't there conflict? Did we not have Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta as a deputy prime minister? Did we not have Musalia Mudavadi as a deputy prime minister? Did we not change that in the Constitution of Kenya 2010? Why are we bringing it in after only 10 years? Then we are told, and I am a supporter of women's involvement because of the historical disadvantage that they have suffered over the years. I am therefore affirmative action. I supported it at Bomas and I do. But look at their prescription. We introduced 360 seats. And if we don't get enough women, then we go to the party list, and on the basis of the votes that have been cast, we top up until we get a number that ensures that there's no gender is more than 2/3. We'll do that for 15 years. They have now introduced a term limit. Our parliament could end up being one of the largest in the world relative to our GDP. Do we want to do that? Then you go down to the counties, it is the same top up, and they now cap it up as 10 years. I mean, it is so sad that a country that is so bedeviled with problems is now adding more. And then I hear somebody telling me, oh, the prime minister will not earn a higher salary. What is a salary in the life of any public office? It is the other hidden costs FT of 11 million in your office, per diems, the vehicles, salary is 0.00001% of what it takes to take care of an office. And then we are told many things are going to happen with BBI, that Higher Education Loans Board was one of them. Really? Shouldn't the Board of Higher Education Loans Board sit there? Then we are told that the youth are going to have tax holiday. Oh, if you don't have work, what is a holiday in the first place? If you don't have work, what is the value of a holiday? Then you create a youth commission. Don't we have many of those youth things?
You actually have a ministry.
Yeah, we have a ministry for youth. So what is the commission going to do that the ministry cannot do? So when you look at the BBI, and it's so painful that the political leadership thinks, this is what pains me as a Kenyan, the assumption that Kenyans are so stupid, so desperate, that they can be told what to do and they will not question it. And we are now being told there is no time. Time for what? Who is Kenya being wound up? Kenya is the next, and we'll die and leave Kenya here. There is time. We need not and we must not have a referendum before the next election. In fact, I dare say, because of the poisoned environment, let us postpone this BBI business until after the elections in 2022, when there is sobriety. When there is sobriety, then we can begin to discuss. And remember, this is something I must say. Parliament, Kenyan Parliament, in its wisdom, in the month of February, the year 2014, did mandate the Auditor General of the Republic of Kenya to undertake a social audit of the Kenyan Constitution. Ouko did so, and I was one of the persons who did quality check. He did so and released a report in 2016 in which he said, amongst other things, that we have too many members of parliament. We should reduce them. We have too many commissions. We should reduce them. He fell short of saying that we had too many counties. 47 counties? The United States of America, with a population of 330 million, with a GDP of 20 trillion, has only 50 states. And yet, as I speak to you now, it is more expensive to take care of a Kenyan governor than it is to take care of a governor in the state of California, which is only one state and whose economy is 15 times larger than Kenya. Who said we needed deputy ministers? What do? I only know 3 members of parliament in Nairobi. What are the members? I don't know the others. I don't know my MCA. I don't know what they do. Now we are saying that we have had the NMS. Nairobi is going to be added 12 constituents. To do what? If there were MPs working, MCAs working, why would we have General Badi being appointed by President Kenyatta? What are they doing? Tell me another thing. If you have a constituency development fund, why do you need a ward fund? Is the ward not in the constituency? And indeed, if you have the county government with a governor, why do you need those funds? Why don't those funds just go to the county, and then we have a vote for the constituency and a vote for the ward? I mean, you know, sometimes it is so painful to read a document which, I mean, this is how not to amend a constitution. This is now how not to write a constitution. Unfortunately, I think the people who are proposing this amendment have the wherewithal to put it down our throat. They have the capacity.
I've actually said they'll take it like malaria drugs.
Oh yeah, they have the capacity, but let them remember this. Let them remember this. There have been leaders in the world who thought that they were larger than life, almost as large as death. But they too have their comings and their goings. So when we are amending a constitution, let us think of the next generation and not the next elections. But even if they force it down our throats, we will have our say, so that history may record that when our constitution was being mutilated for no reason, we raised our voices even if they could not be heard at their most eloquent. That will be our contribution to history.
Wow. That's very profound.
Churches have spoken. The Muslim ulamas have spoken. The imams have spoken. The academics have spoken. Everybody has spoken, saying, let us reason together. The political class, at least some of them are saying, we shall not reason with you. Yet even God in his majestic divinity called the people. God called the people and say, let us come and reason together. Our politicians are saying, no, there is no time. What is the time? Who is this who is prescribing time?
Where are we
BBI?
going?
I will wake up very early in the morning to vote no. Very early in the morning to vote no, even if I'm on the losing side. Unless people retreat and say, let us reason together.